A few years ago, ChatGPT launched and the consensus was obvious. Writers are finished. AI can already write better than most humans, and it's only getting better. So explain this to me. Recently, Anthropic, the company that makes Claude, arguably the best creative writing AI in the world, posted a job for a writer. Salary range up to $320,000 per year. But they're paying for something else entirely. And Anthropic wasn't alone. Around the same time, OpenAI posted a content strategist role, $310,000 to $393,000 per year. PayPal posted head of CEO content, up to $292,000. Andreessen Horowitz announced an entire fellowship program recruiting people they described as, and I'm quoting here, highly functional people who are also very online. Something is happening. The obvious explanation is these companies need expertise, economics knowledge, policy experience. But The Economist doesn't pay anywhere near that much. Neither does the Wall Street Journal. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly what these companies are actually buying. Because it's not writing, it's not even expertise. It's a new kind of power. And once you understand what it is, you'll see why institutions are willing to pay almost $400,000 a year for it. Let's look at what Anthropic actually wrote in these postings. The language is revealing. The economics and policy lead role says, quote, Anthropic is at the center of critical conversations about AI's economic and societal implications. Interesting, but keep reading. The role will engage with policymakers, think tanks, academic institutions, and media to advance productive conversations about AI policy and economics. Advance, not report. They want someone with, quote, strong instincts for identifying which policy and economic questions will matter most as AI develops. Read that again. They're hiring someone to shape what questions get asked in the first place. Now here's something interesting. Anthropic posted 2 editorial roles. The AI and science lead pays $200 to $225, but the policy lead up to $320. That $65,000 spread tells you exactly what they think is strategically important. So what are these companies actually paying for? I'd call it algorithmic negotiation at institutional scale. Let me explain what that means. Modern discourse operates on 2 opposing forces. On one side, specific knowledge that makes someone worth listening to, deep expertise, real credentials. On the other side, legibility to the right audiences, understanding how ideas move through institutions, how frames shift, how to make concepts matter. Most people can do one or the other. Academics produce rigorous but often unreadable work. Their papers get cited by other academics but never reach the people actually making decisions. PR people produce polished but often empty messaging. It sounds good but collapses under the slightest scrutiny. The valuable skill, the $300,000 skill, is negotiating between these 2 forces without fully surrendering to either, maintaining credibility while reaching people, staying rigorous while remaining legible. This requires being embedded in discourse, living in it, understanding moves and counter moves, knowing what frames are played out and which are fresh, recognizing when an argument has been absorbed by the mainstream versus when it still has edge. Having what Anthropic's posting calls strong instincts for identifying which questions will matter most. That's predictive judgment about which conversations determine everything else. You can't learn that from a textbook. You develop it by being in the conversation day after day, year after year. AI can produce clean text explaining any position. Feed it a prompt, get polished paragraphs, but it can't tell you which position to take, which question to elevate, how to shift what the institutions that matter think is important, when to push and when to hold back. That's what costs $300,000. Here's where it gets interesting. What used to be a personal skill is now being systematized. The A16Z fellowship makes this explicit. Here's how they describe what they're building, quote, forward-deployed new media where team members embed themselves in portfolio companies for critical periods and execute a launch together. Forward-deployed. That's a term Palantir popularized for sending engineers into literal war zones to deploy software for government clients. They embed directly into military operations to make their technology work in real conditions. Now that same concept is being applied to content. The founding cohort includes James Reyna, chief of staff to Mr. Beast, 450 million subscribers, routinely over 100 million views per video. Reyna was seen inside the operation, seeing exactly how it works. Andreessen Horowitz is extracting operational knowledge about how to build massive audiences, then deploying it strategically across their entire portfolio, taking what works at the highest level and systematizing it. The speaker lineup includes Mark Andreessen, Lulu Chang Meservey, who's famous in Silicon Valley for transforming crisis PR, guiding clients like Sam Altman through tricky situations, and Dylan Patel from SemiAnalysis, who turned semiconductor analysis into one of tech's most influential newsletters. Andreessen Horowitz calls this timeline takeover. They explicitly offered to, quote, win the internet for a day as a service. The old agency timeline of 3 to 6 months to plan a launch, they call it archaic. You must now execute in what they describe as a shockingly short period of time. Their stated goal is building the, quote, the best turnkey media operation in venture. They're creating a pipeline that turns narrative understanding into a competitive advantage for their entire portfolio. Systematically, they call themselves the F1 pit crew of venture, infrastructure designed for speed and precision. This explains something that otherwise seems strange. Mega successful entrepreneurs who should be far too busy to spend hours online every day. Elon Musk runs multiple companies. Mark Andreessen runs a massive VC firm, but both spend enormous amounts of time posting on Twitter. That looks like distraction until you understand what they're actually doing. They're building infrastructure. Every industry now has a cultural upstream, and it lives on platform. In tech, it's largely Twitter. In beauty, TikTok and Instagram. In gaming, Twitch and Discord and YouTube. The specific platform varies, but the principle is constant. These platforms don't just reflect what's important, they determine what becomes important. Control the upstream and you control what flows downstream. For most of history, cultural production was controlled by institutions with distribution, newspapers, publishers, TV networks. The internet disrupted that. Now, it's becoming clear. Cultural production happens on platforms, but control requires systematic infrastructure, not just using the platforms, but building organizational capacity around them. This creates a recursive loop, and the people who understood this early, who built the infrastructure to systematically occupy cultural upstream, aren't just influencing conversations. They're deciding what conversations happen at all. You see this most clearly playing out in politics. The 2016 election was the first fully social media-driven US presidential cycle. The outsider candidate won partly because he understood platform mechanics better than his opponent, but it was still chaotic. The advantage was partly accidental. By the most recent cycle, everything had changed. Both campaigns were running sophisticated narrative operations, real-time rapid response content, platform native strategy across TikTok, Twitter, YouTube. The professionalization was complete at a national level. And now that capability is cascading to even local races like in New York City. What presidential campaigns had a decade ago, city council candidates have now. This is how power reallocates. First, it looks like chaos. Platforms disrupting traditional gatekeepers. Then it looks like systemization, new infrastructure being built to occupy the space. We're watching that systemization happen in real time, and the companies that understand it are paying accordingly. So let's come back to that Anthropic job posting. $320,000 for a writer at an AI company. Now you understand what they're buying. Words are cheap. AI produces millions of them every second. Experts are everywhere, but the ability to shape which questions get asked, Which frames become standard? What people think matters, and that's rare. In a world where narrative increasingly shapes reality, where questions determine policies, regulation, and who gets to build, owning discourse means owning outcomes. The bad writers are finished. The okay writers are finished. The content mills are definitely finished. But the people who can identify which questions will matter before they're obvious, who can engage with institutions while maintaining strategic clarity, who can negotiate with algorithms while maintaining substantive knowledge, they're going to own discourse, and institutions are paying accordingly. If this helped you see the game differently, please subscribe. I break down shifts like this regularly, the kind of stuff that's happening right now, but won't be obvious to everyone else for another year or two. And if you want to go deeper, I write a newsletter where I unpack these ideas in more detail, things I can't always fit in the video. The link's in the description. I'll see you in the next one.